This truly sensational case took place in West Germany. Marianne Bachmeier was born on June 3, 1950, in a small town named Zarsterd in the state of Lower Saxony in West Germany. Marianne's parents moved there immediately after the end of World War II due to persecution by her father, a former SS officer and a member of the National Socialist Party of Germany. Marianne grew up in a conservative, religiously influenced family. It is said that she did not have a happy childhood because of this. Her father was overbearing, abusive, and also a heavy drinker. He spent more time in a bar near the house than with his family. Marianne's mother also showed no emotions or empathy for her daughter. They had little contact and spent little time together. She didn't seem to care at all what her daughter was doing. The father's alcoholism gradually made him more aggressive toward the family, so the mother decided to divorce her husband. One could not say that Marianne was sad about this. On the contrary, she thought she could finally be free and happy. However, her mother soon remarried another man who turned out to be just as abusive as her biological father. Because of this, she often clashed with her stepfather and called him a dictator. Unfortunately, the young girl's mother did not take her side, but always supported her husband and threw her out of the house in one of these conflict situations. On the street, Marianne was repeatedly abused by various men. As a result of one such incident, she became pregnant. In 1966, at the age of 16, she gave birth to her first child. Due to the lack of a normal home and a steady income, Bachmeier was forced to give her firstborn child up for adoption and became pregnant again 2 years later by her then-boyfriend. Despite the unhealthy relationship with the man, Marianne insisted on keeping the fetus. Shortly after the child was born, she was again abused by a stranger. This unpleasant experience triggered a series of psychological issues for the girl. Additionally, her boyfriend decided to leave her, leaving her alone with the child without being able to support herself. Therefore, she had to place the child in foster care again. After some time, Marianne dropped out of school entirely and looked for a job to finally support herself. Around the same time, she met a man named Christian Berthold, the manager of the bar where she started working. Shortly after meeting him, they began dating, and a few months later, the girl became pregnant with her third child. This time, she was prepared to take care of raising it, as she had a steady income. However, Christian did not agree with Marianne's decision, and eventually, the young couple ended their relationship. Notably, the separation from the child's father did not affect her decision to give birth to the child. On November 14, 1972, the girl gave birth to her third child, a girl named Anna. Marianne's mother demanded that she give up this child just like the other two, but she was not willing to do so. Moreover, she could not bear the guilt of giving up a third child, so Marianne decided to be a good mother. Among other things, she underwent surgery that completely destroyed any chance of conceiving again. As she later admitted, this was quite normal at the time. Since then, the girl and her little daughter have lived in Lübeck. Despite the various difficulties that Marianne faced in one way or another, she felt happy. Anna was the only person in her life who did not want to harm her or do her any harm. However, the fact that she was raising her daughter alone meant that Marianne had to take her to work at the bar, making it impossible for her to care for her child except during rare breaks from work. Over the years, Anna grew older, and those close to the Bachmeier family noticed that she treated her daughter like an adult despite her young age. She demanded both independence and responsibility from her daughter. Anna, in turn, was an unusually open and creative child. She was often left to herself, especially on days when her mother worked late into the night and then slept all day. Marianne was very aware that such a lifestyle was not suitable for raising a child. She sometimes even thought about finding a good foster family for her daughter, but she quickly tried to suppress that thought. At the same time, 7-year-old Anna enjoyed her freedom. She explored the surroundings of her neighborhood and wandered back and forth alone. She met various people, some of whom obviously had rather bad intentions. Anna also played with pets, which sometimes got her into trouble. This happened on May 5, 1980. According to the information available, Marianne had an argument with her daughter because she woke up in a bad mood and expressed a desire to skip school. The girl said she wanted to go to the park to play with her friends. Eventually, the mother gave in and allowed Anna to go play without guessing her true intentions. When Marianne returned home from work in the evening, she found that her daughter was still not home. She waited a few more hours, hoping the child would show up soon, but that did not happen. So the girl decided to go out on the street and try to find the child on her own. She asked some of her daughter's friends and their parents to find out anything about Anna's possible whereabouts, but no one knew anything. She seemed to have simply vanished into thin air. Realizing that she could not manage alone, Bachmeier turned to the police and reported the incident. The next day, another distressed person arrived at the police station, apparently wanting to report her future fiancé. She stated that her partner had apparently committed the murder of a girl who sometimes came to the apartment to play with the cats. At least he confessed to her himself. She added, among other things, that the girl's name was Anna. After hearing the woman's statement, the police realized that everything indicated that a 35-year-old man named Klaus had committed the crime. Afterward, he felt guilty. That is, his conscience would not leave him alone. As a result, he told his fiancée in detail what had happened. This triggered a fierce argument between the two, after which Klaus went to a bar and drank until he was unconscious. Klaus Grabowski had already had a run-in with the state at this point. He had previously been convicted of violating the sexual integrity of two girls. While in custody, he underwent a psychological evaluation, which found that he was addicted to attraction to minors. Moreover, he was practically incapable of self-control. As a result, the perpetrator was not sent to prison, but to a psychological help center. After several years, the authorities offered him a highly questionable chemical castration in exchange for early release. Klaus, in turn, agreed to the proposal without much thought. It should be noted that this procedure was practically painless. In fact, a person who has committed certain illegal acts is given a series of injections containing a drug that reduces the activity of hormones responsible for arousal and attraction. The idea is that a criminal who has undergone such correction will never again commit their misdeeds. However, modern experts believe that such a measure cannot completely free a person from obsessive thoughts and fantasies. In this case, it was even completely ineffective. This was primarily because the procedure described above was easily reversible. Nevertheless, Klaus was released and was soon no longer under police control. A few years later, Grabowski underwent hormone therapy to reverse the effects of chemical castration and increase his testosterone levels. Law enforcement generally did not advise against it, mainly because the man explained to them that he wanted to start a family. Thus, he gave the impression of a man who was leading a normal, happy life. To maintain this image and earn a living, he opened a small butcher shop. Over time, the people around him almost forgot about his reputation. The day after Anna's murder, the police went to Klaus's house, but he was no longer there. He took the girl's body with him and left a note for his fiancée, asking her to meet him at a bar that same evening to discuss what had happened. The authorities took advantage of the opportunity and arrested the man as soon as he appeared at the venue. Immediately after his arrest, Grabowski stated that he initially had no intention of touching Anna. He defended himself in the most disgusting way, claiming that the 7-year-old girl had seduced him and extorted money from him. He claimed the girl manipulated him by saying she would tell her mother about his attempts to touch her. Klaus then mentioned that he had hidden the victim's body in a cardboard box, which he placed on the shore of a nearby canal. Marianne was shocked and devastated when the authorities came to her house to inform her of her daughter's tragic death, but the worst phase of her life was yet to come. During the lengthy trial, the woman had to listen to the statements of various witnesses, all of whom said she was an incompetent mother and that her daughter had practically grown up on the street. According to those questioned, such an incident could have happened at any time, since the girl's mother was practically never home and worked in a bar until late at night. These words hurt Marianne, who was already inconsolable and angry. However, what bothered her the most was not that, but the fact that the defendant was likely to evade responsibility for his actions and escape deserved punishment. It was almost clear to everyone that Klaus had certain psychological problems that would spare him from prison. Therefore, Marianne began to plan revenge against the man who had taken her daughter's life and was aware that she would have to get her hands dirty in doing so. Klaus, for his part, continued to stick to his position, emphasizing that it was Anna who had seduced him and then manipulated and threatened him for money. In his opinion, the girl's behavior was the deciding factor that led him to commit the crime. He claimed he did it to avoid going to prison. After hearing Grabowski's false statement, Marianne came to what she thought was the only solution at the time. She bought a gun. After purchasing the weapon, she practiced shooting for several months. She did this secretly from her relatives so that no one would suspect anything. She realized that she could no longer listen to the perpetrator's false claims, and her patience simply ran out. It happened on March 6, 1981. That day, at around 10 a.m., Marianne entered the courtroom in Lübeck, arriving a few minutes late. Her face showed little to no emotion, her posture was upright, and her hands were in the pockets of her light coat. She stopped a few meters behind Klaus, standing still like a statue. At that moment, the trial was in full swing. Everything was going according to plan, and somehow, incredibly, Marianne had a gun from the world-renowned Italian company Beretta with her. It is still unclear how exactly she managed to pass all the strict security barriers of the courthouse, even by today's standards. Marianne felt as if time had stood still. This feeling lasted only a few seconds. Afterward, she sensed an opportunity to act. At that moment, her daughter's murderer was making another statement. The man stood facing the judge, not even realizing what was happening behind his back. At that point, Marianne had already pulled a pistol from her right pocket, and in the blink of an eye, she fired a series of precise shots, pulling the trigger 8 times. Only 7 of the 8 bullets hit Grabowski, who almost immediately fell to the ground. The 8th bullet never left the gun's muzzle, it jammed. Some in the public saw this as a form of divine justice, since only 7 bullets hit Klaus, the same age Anna was at the time of the crime. The expression on Marianne's face, the woman who had enacted this act of justice, did not change, showing once more her determination. She made no attempt to flee and did not resist when the guards arrested her. Shortly after, a court employee approached Klaus and confirmed that there was nothing more that could be done for him. At that point, a visible expression of relief appeared on Marianne's face, in stark contrast to her previous emotions. Of course, this was far from the end of the story. The girl still faced a trial she could not avoid. Those who saw Marianne during this time or had contact with her agreed that she was in a kind of trance, trying to understand what had happened to her and her daughter. Given this state of mind, the court psychiatrist conducted a preliminary examination to try to diagnose or guess what was going on in her head. To do this, he gave her a piece of paper and a pen and asked her to write something. The specialist tried to analyze the handwriting, not telling the subject what the purpose of the experiment was. Marianne took a pencil and wrote, "I did it for you, Anna." And next to this sentence, She drew 7 hearts, one for each year she had lived, or for each bullet that hit Klaus. The next day, all German newspapers published a photo of Marianne Bachmeier and labeled her the Revenge Mother. All in all, this was not surprising, as it was one of the most famous cases of vigilante justice in Europe, extensively reported by both European and international media. Among other things, various television teams from all over Europe traveled to Lübeck for an extended period. Shortly after the incident, Marianne was put on trial for the murder of Klaus Grabowski. During the trial, the woman stated that she was not fully aware of the actual situation and her actions. According to her own belief, she was in a kind of dream state. She even said she had seen her daughter, who she believed had walked past her in the courtroom. Bachmeier also made openly contradictory statements, which made her look even worse in front of the judge. For example, she claimed that she had originally bought the gun only to harm herself. However, no one in the courtroom believed this. It was generally assumed that the woman had practiced shooting with the weapon for a long time before using it on that day. Still, many people worldwide supported the defendant because she took justice into her own hands and gave the criminal no chance to go free again. At the same time, there were those who saw Marianne as a criminal who had no right to justice. They branded her a murderer and called her a bad and irresponsible mother who had given up 2 children for adoption. In March 1983, after lengthy jury deliberations, Marianne Bachmeier was convicted of manslaughter and illegal possession of an unregistered firearm. The combined sentence for these 2 charges was 6 years in prison. While the woman was in prison, many citizens sent her flowers, sweets, and letters of support and sympathy. However, there were also people who believed that the state should not tolerate vigilante justice. Furthermore, the public criticized West German justice for allowing a man who had committed offenses against minors to undergo libido reduction therapy after his release. After 3 years, the authorities decided that Bachmeier did not deserve such a severe sentence. Shortly after her release, Marianne Bachmeier sold the exclusive rights to her life story and published it in a news magazine for 100,000 Deutsche Marks. She stated that she did this only to pay off all the debts that had arisen from the trial. A few years later, she married a teacher and moved to Accra, the capital of Ghana, where she lived until 1990. Later, she divorced her husband and moved to Italy, specifically to the island of Sicily, where she worked in a hospice. Marianne remained in Italy until she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which forced her to return to Germany. Years later, when she realized that the disease was consuming her, she asked a friend to accompany her with a film camera until the last minutes of her life. She died on September 17, 1996, at the age of 46, in a hospital in Lübeck from cancer. Her final resting place is in a cemetery next to her daughter's grave, and since then, they could finally be together. Thank you for watching, and take care.